We're asking this morning, could compulsory jabs eventually also be introduced here? And we're going to be looking at the legal ramifications of this, how it could be introduced in the UK. So let's talk to Meghan Campbell. She's Deputy Director of the Oxford Human Rights Hub and Senior Lecturer at the University of Birmingham. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us bright and early this Saturday morning. What's your gut reaction to this news coming out of Austria, first of all?
I guess my gut reaction is that it raises some really interesting and challenging human rights issues in that people's human rights are implicated when there are vaccine mandates, but it also raises questions about when can your human rights be limited to achieve public health aims.
OK, so there's a fine balance to be struck. Do you think that this drastic action is justified and proportionate then, given the threat that the country's facing from the virus?
It's always interesting to try to comment on another country when you don't always know the specifics, but it is definitely raising questions about if it is proportionate and, as you say, justified. We know it's a public health measure. As it was reported on earlier, there has been vaccine hesitancy and other safety measures have not been as effective, so they've sort of ramped up to the next step. And that is what the court would be looking at when it reviews vaccine mandates.
It sounds like, Meghan, there's going to be a lot of resistance to getting this vaccine as Austria gets closer to February. Is it simply a case of if enough people refuse to get the vaccine, that there's nothing the authorities can do?
Well, that will depend on how the vaccine mandate is, the sort of intricacies of it. If it includes fines or imprisonment or whatever sort of penalties it includes, that will obviously influence people's behavior. And that also will influence the proportionality of the law. If the law includes draconian measures if you don't get vaccinated, it's harder to see if it's proportionate. But if it includes smaller penalties, then it might be more likely to be seen as a proportionate measure.
If there are citizens in Austria, and certainly I know that there would be here in the UK if any such legislation was ever brought in, who really vehemently object to being mandated to have a vaccine, what protection in law do they have then? Can the Austrians be taking this, appealing to the European Court of Human Rights, for example?
Yeah, exactly. So if you disagree with a vaccine mandate, you have the ability to challenge it in court. You can argue that it might be against your rights to religious freedom or freedom of belief or your right to privacy. But then the court will weigh up that violation of your right against the public health aims and the proportionality of the vaccine mandate, and looking at sort of all the public health measures that are being used, the severity of the fourth or fifth wave, and the penalties imposed if you don't get vaccinated. So look at a whole range of factors to weigh up if the vaccine mandate is consistent with human rights.
Yeah, we spoke to a legal expert in the previous hour, and he said that it tends to be the European Court of Human Rights tends to err on the side of governments as opposed to individual rights, whereas over here it may be the other way around if it were to ever happen here. Is that your understanding of it as well, or is your view different?
No, I don't think my view is different. It's always hard to predict what courts are going to do. It's always very tied to the specific fact scenario and the specific what's actually happening in that jurisdiction. It's hard to say, well, a vaccine mandate might be legal in Austria, so it's going to be legal in the UK or legal in Germany. You would have to look very carefully at this situation at the time, the severity of it, and how the vaccine mandate is rolled out. So it's just difficult to predict what the courts might do. But they would look very carefully and weigh up both the human rights that are engaged and the benefits to a vaccine mandate.